Welcome back, guests, to our Leaders of Today. I am so excited to introduce you to today's guest, Iuri Melo, a licensed clinical social worker, author, and co-founder of School Pulse, a nationally recognized student support service making a positive impact in over 300 schools. Originally from Portugal, Iuri moved to the United States at age 15. Let's talk about teen issues.
I love it.
Navigated the challenges of adolescence with support and optimism. His personal journey and 2 years of volunteer service deeply shaped his commitment to helping teens. As a therapist, he created an adventure-based therapy model using activities like bouldering to connect with youth and teach essential life skills. Iuri is the author of Mind Over Gray Matter and the teen bestseller Know Thy Selfie. Today, through School Pulse, he brings optimism, growth mindset, and encouragement directly to students, parents, and educators, proving that even a text message can spark healing and transformation. Let's jump right in. You're listening to today's leaders, from teens to titans. Hi, I'm Lorraine Connell, a teen leadership coach. I transitioned from teaching chemistry to coaching teens in leadership, helping them realize they can do hard things. We've often believed that leadership is an innate trait, but it's actually a skill that you build and improve. On this show, you'll meet today's leaders who share their teenage experiences, revealing how they developed confidence, direction, and the tools to become the leaders they are now. You'll discover how you or the teens in your life have the potential to become confident leaders, even if it doesn't seem possible. Welcome, Iuri. I am so glad to have you today.
Lorraine, I'm loving it. I appreciate you inviting me.
Positive optimism.
I know. Let's go. I think this is going to be absolutely fabulous.
So, Iuri, can you take a trip down memory lane for us and take us back to who Iuri was as a teenager? Maybe at the moment of moving to the United States, what were some of the obstacles? What were some of the challenges? And tell us how you overcame them.
I was actually born in Mozambique. It was actually a Portuguese colony, and we lived there. I think in 1974, the Portuguese government kind of left all of their colonies, and in 1975, it just wasn't a very safe place, and so my family came and migrated to Portugal, which is where we're all kind of originally from. We're all Portuguese. And I grew up in this lovely place in the southern coast of Portugal. Like, to be honest, it is just an extraordinary location. But at the age of 12, I'll kind of move quickly on to my teen years. At the age of 12, my parents divorced. I would say that was a pretty significant event in my life. My older brother and sister were kind of out of the home by then. And I remember living with my mom for that time. I saw my dad during that time as well, had I think maybe one visit with him after that, and it wasn't great. I just couldn't wrap my mind around the idea of my parents being with different people. It was very difficult for me. Like, I was never disrespectful. I don't think I was ever unkind. That just is not kind of part of my makeup a little bit, but it was so uncomfortable for me that I never went back. So at the age of 15, I moved to the United States. So by then, my sister was living in Provo, Utah, which is kind of the site for Brigham Young University. Just a lovely place. She was married with a wonderful person. And my mom said, to be honest, Iuri, there's not a ton of opportunity here for you. Why don't you go live with your sister in the United States? And I did. And so I actually came, lived with her and her husband in kind of student housing. I mean, like college student housing. I did kind of some little odds and ends jobs, like, I don't know, swept around the apartment and shoveled, snow from the walks, like during the winter. But had, I would say, a pretty good experience when I arrived in the U.S. I would say that as a teenager, probably one of the very first things that I noticed when I stepped into this beautiful high school, Timpview High School, lovely place. But I just remember feeling obviously disconnected, right? I mean, number one, I don't think I spoke the language very well by then, right? I mean, I grew up speaking Portuguese and knew some English for sure and could speak a little bit, but I would definitely say it was not fabulous. But I just remember feeling like, I mean, anytime I would walk, say, into like a lunchroom or even down the hallway, I just didn't really know anybody, right? I felt like everybody had already kind of grown up together. They all had their friend circles and they all had their connections and their groups and their tribe. And I did not very much. And so I feel like it was a bit of a lonely time, but I was very fortunate. I was part of some community groups and clubs and part of kind of a religious community and was able to make friends through that. I had some people who were great. They were proactive, they were kind, they were gentle, they were fun. And I would say that those people definitely kind of carried me through those years and became just a source of happiness, to be honest. But I would say that I was definitely not the bravest, was definitely not the most courageous. I would also kind of like to say that I feel like personality wise, my style is quite aloof. I'm not super insightful unless somebody like Lorraine comes out and says, "Hey, Iuri, like, can you take us back to your history and let's take a look inside and see what happened?" And then I kind of go like, "Oh, like we go." But I would say that most, like the way that my brain kind of runs, its natural pattern is to very much be exactly where we are and not really travel outside of those two places, of that place specifically. And so I don't travel to the past very often. I don't travel to the future very often. I pretty much stay present. And of course, there's some advantages and disadvantages to that, right? The nice part is that when you're somewhere, you're really going to be where your feet are. But I definitely feel like planning is not one of my strong suits. It's something that when I do, I have to be pretty deliberate. And when I'm looking for real deep awareness or insight, I have to be really deliberate in doing that too, because my brain just wants to be right here at this moment. But my teen years were, I would say, with total respect for the individuals that were around me, I was just overwhelmingly blessed, overwhelmingly fortunate to just have my lovely sister, the support of my mom, and even my brother and my brother-in-law and some of my friends. And I think because of their influence, I really just had a lovely time. But as I look at some of the content that I put out now, right, whether it's in my book or in the videos, and maybe we'll arrive there in just a moment, but as I look back and as I look at maybe the enthusiasm that I put out, even one of my kind of like quotes of like, go into the world with confidence, I would definitely say that was not me. I don't feel like I was withdrawn or isolated, but I definitely was not the kind of person that would proactively go out and seek out a lot of things. I did sometimes. I mean, it's not an all or nothing, obviously, but
Right.
that's definitely something that as I look, I can sense that I lacked that. And I think as a result, I would love to build that in these teens of today, is to go into the world confidently. Like, don't let fear drive your life. You got to take the wheel. And so I think that there's definitely a connection now, and I appreciate you for actually kind of helping me make that connection right now.
Yeah. So the reason I do this podcast is because these conversations are priceless. And for me to be the only one, if you and I were just sitting here having this conversation and that aha or that realization came to you, like it's really great for you. But the people who are being connected through you, the impacts that we're having, it's really kind of cool for other people to recognize the work that we're doing is because maybe we needed that when we were a teenager, or maybe if we had had that, we would have done something even grander. You know, I always think like if there had been a Lorraine in my life, the work that I'm doing now could have started a lot earlier. And yet, I don't know that Lorraine who exists today would be the Lorraine that would exist if there had been somebody in my life who was giving me that confidence boost and that development. So it's really important for me to allow my listeners who can be parents, teachers, maybe teens who've been shared this message by a parent to hear that there's so many different ways that our lives will go and it's not a direct path. And so for me, I guess one of the other questions that came up as you were sharing this story was adventuring part of your journey? Like, when did bouldering and rock climbing, when did that exist for you? And how did that then become this, like, oh, this is such an incredible tool to use with teens? I wholeheartedly agree. But where did that arrive for you?
Yeah, and I actually need to give credit to my older brother and sister for that. I'll go back a little bit further than, but I, growing up in that lovely place in Portugal, so it's just coastal, on the very southern coast of Portugal, and just surrounded by just the most extraordinary beaches and cliffs and just adventure everywhere, to be honest, all the way from, whether you're bodyboarding or surfing or snorkeling or spearfishing or just caving, like that's what I grew up with. And once again, I wanted to specifically say to my older brother and sister, they were doing those things and they brought me along to do those things. And then I think I developed an affinity for that. And they were almost kind of little guides. They would guide some of their friends to do these crazy adventures, like, yeah, life risking activities and other people. And I think that has continued very much. And so when I think of when I first got my master's degree, and by then, of course, I was here in the United States, but I had a good friend of mine who I had gone to school with, and he lived in a different town, but I convinced him to come down and to teach me how to rock climb. I was like, man, you got to like teach me how to rock climb. Like, I want to learn. And he's like, okay, I'll come down. And so he came down and we rock climbed a little bit. And then he kind of introduced me to bouldering, which is, for your listeners, it's basically bouldering is like free climbing. It's like you're not attached to ropes. I mean, you have some safety things in place, but it's like the purest form of climbing. It's really focused on power. It's very powerful. It's very difficult and really technique focused. So he introduced me to that, and I kind of just watched him kind of climb this little section. And honestly, I just saw that and I was like, wow, that is just like elegant. Like, wow, that is fabulous. And so I actually tried it, and it was very difficult. I was totally stuck, didn't do very well, but had kind of caught the bug a little bit. I was like, ooh, like I want to do that. And so as I was beginning to build my private practice, I mean, all I really needed to do is I got some climbing shoes. I got a little chalk bag. My office was like 7 minutes away from this place. St. George is like that. There's just like literally like world-class climbing within like 10 minutes. It's incredible. And so I would just kind of cruise up there, climb a little bit. And then I was working with a group of foster kids, lots of teenagers. And I honestly thought to myself, like, man, I'm going to start bringing these kids up here because there's like magic in these rocks. There's something cool here. And so I did. Like, I began to bring them. And of course, they loved it, right? Like, it's so much better than sometimes kind of that sterile, like focused environment of like a therapist's office that can be quite intimidating, right? And bouldering or climbing outside with me was not that at all. Like, it was very different. It was very low pressure. We're actually kind of engaging in this activity while at the same time we're kind of connecting. It's kind of what I call my 3-in-1 strategy, right? We're like learning a brand new skill. You're outside exercising, and we're doing a little therapy too. It's just the best of both worlds. And so my goal has always kind of been, as I work with teens, is I don't just use climbing as kind of a vehicle for like some sort of a metaphor or analogy for what I'm trying to teach you. Like, no, like by the time you're done climbing with me, like you're going to be a legitimate climber. Like, it's going to be part of who you are a little bit. That's always my goal. Like, I don't want to just do an activity. I want somebody to develop some mastery, because mastery is like a renewable source of happiness. Like, it's something that anyone can tap into at any point in their life and just like immediately suck out some joy, some happiness, some satisfaction, and some enjoyment. So that's just a little bit of why I've done that. And of course, it went from bouldering to climbing to lead climbing to canyoneering. And I still get to do that. I do that with my children. I've got 5 just ridiculously cool kids, and my lovely wife who tries to hang in there. And it's just an awesome sport to come and do these things that aren't particularly like her favorite thing to do, but she's fabulous that way as well. So
yeah, I see so much value. You're not the first person. In fact, one of my own children struggled in talk therapy because, as you can probably relate, teenagers sitting still and sitting in their emotions, like it's almost a recipe for disaster. And so for him, getting out and hiking, he's like, oh, I'll tell you all the things. Whereas if he's sitting in a therapist's office, he's like a mute. And so I heard so many values in what you were sharing, right? So you're learning something new. So you're being vulnerable. And you're being vulnerable because you're teaching them and you're helping them. And they see this as a partnership right from the beginning. So your foundation is set. You're building a rapport. You're connecting in so many ways. And not to be dramatic, but their lives are in your.
And Lorraine, I will actually tell you this. My life is in theirs. We're talking about within about 15 to 20 minutes of me taking them to do an outside climb. They're on the belay side for me. So I'm 30 feet up and they're lowering me down. Of course, I do that to them as well, right? But I'm
Right.
teaching them to do that very thing, like from the very get-go.
And so
Which,
much of their time in school is presented in a way of you can't, you won't, you aren't. And this is like, you are. Look at you go. You're already supporting and you're helping this other person. Like the power behind that message is so incredible. And so I'm curious. In my mind, I'm like, okay, so Iuri was doing this one-on-one, maybe with groups, but I know that at some point you're like, more people need to know the feelings. And so I'm curious, is that how School Pulse sort of derived from you? Because that's where I am. Can't just be with one kid doing this work. I want every kid to have these opportunities. So tell me, how did you go from that to School Pulse?
yeah, I love that. I feel like one of those transitions was writing my books. And I have to say, what a wonderful influence my mom was there too. My mom was quite the unsung writer. She's really a poet and honestly, just fabulous. Of course, I mean, most of her writings are in Portuguese, but I think even her behavior growing up with her, seeing the things that she had written kind of just became this little thing that kind of just itched inside of me. And then 12, 13 years into therapy, I just had so many things in my mind, right? And that's kind of when I wrote Mind Over Gray Matter, and that's more specifically for adults. And then Know Thy Selfie, of course, for teens, right? Which I just wanted to provide these little nuggets of just like, try this, do this, think this, right? With the understanding that if we could do that, they could just live deep and suck the marrow, right? That's what I want for them. Like, just get into it. School Pulse, specifically, how that came about was probably around 2017. Once again, in this idea, by then I was living here in St. George, which is just a lovely place. But that year, my two older girls were actually attending high school at that time. And we had 7 student suicides in our community. And it was crazy. Yeah, it was odd. I think by then we had 4 or 5 high schools. And we had 7 students who took their life by suicide, 2 at my girls' school. And then there was actually another student that lost their life as well, not by suicide, but accidentally. But that specific principal at that school, who was well known to me, who knew about the books that I had written, I had done some events at his school, and he reached out to me and basically said, look, I'll be honest, Iuri, I don't feel like I have anything in my tool bag that's proactive. Yeah. I feel like I'm literally just waiting for crisis to happen. And now it's happened, right? And the pressure that he was feeling from the community, from the district, right? And so him and I kind of began to have this series of conversations of like, what can we do, right? To not be just reactive, right? Or waiting for things to happen, a kind of intervention and risk-based focused to, would it be possible for us to be proactive, right? And so we talked about, well, can we create more resources or an app or things like that? But he was busy. I was very busy. And later on, I actually ended up connecting to a good friend of mine who was a software engineer and really a genius at that. And he really liked this concept. He wanted to build tech for good. And he said, hey, why don't we try to go to teens proactively via text? Like, why don't we text them? And that was the very beginning. I mean, we started at that school. And at that point, all we were doing was we were kind of sending this like one text message to students who participated. with just a little questionnaire like, hey, how are you doing today? And then they could choose 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then whatever they responded, we had these little canned messages that I created, and it would just respond. And there was no interaction back other than these like little kind. And, as we kind of played around with that a little bit over the next few years, Trent, the other co-founder of School Pulse, said to me, hey, these teens are answering back. They're texting back on the platform. Like they're saying things. They're like, I'm not doing very well. And at that point, we were not responding, right? It was just a one-way service, one-way service, right? And so him and I began to talk about, well, what if we added live people to this on the other end, right? And so we did. And I mean, we've been at it now for, like I said, this is our 7th year. And our stories, Lorraine, all the way from obviously kids who are struggling with suicidal ideation or self-harm, or who have reported physical or sexual abuse or homicidal ideation, or in the midst of school shootings, anything that you can imagine. Like these are things that we have just been honored to be a part of these students' lives as they've lost loved ones, as their own parents have gone through divorce. And our goal is to just create what we call our positive interaction team, which is just a team of these licensed professionals and trained paraprofessionals that just greet these kids with enthusiasm, with kindness, with gentleness, that listen. And we provide incredible, like evidence-based resources right to their phones. And our story has been fabulous. I mean, in addition to that, we've added fabulous tools that are kind of school-based interventions to help, administrators deal with disciplinary issues, to help school counselors, to give them additional resources. We send our amazing student success activities to parents via email every week so that they can be appraised of all of that. And we've really become this complete solution for schools. And schools are wonderful. It's been quite the introduction to dive deep into schools that have such a unique, even language, right? I mean, just learning all of their acronyms has been quite fun. So that was kind of the genesis of School Pulse. That's kind of how we came to be. And since then, we've just grown slowly but surely, and are enjoying the wonderful relationships we've made and the lives we've been a part of saving too.
I hear so strongly the reactiveness that so many schools are feeling. And I love that this is a proactive resource that is available. And I'm working with an organization up here in New England that is called Connor's Climb, another organization that was founded out of a teen suicide situation. And the sadness that is of the result of a teen suicide that pushes so many people to do amazing and good things is the silver lining that I continue to come back to when that happens. But the devastation to a community is beyond understandable. And I love your honesty about like, it was a good idea, but we were really busy. And then so often it's where worlds collide, time happens, and all the right pieces come together, and something so incredible is founded as a result. And I love the evolution. We weren't even responding, but the teens were asking for it. And you're in response. We started provided responses. And I just think being attuned, I think so often we ignore the warning signs, we ignore the needs, we ignore the voices of the teenagers who are literally crying out to us saying, you need to listen.
Yeah, I think whenever I think of their current situation, and I will just say, like, I am overwhelmingly optimistic about teens. I think they are just phenomenal. There isn't a high school or middle school or intermediate school that I walk into that I don't just feel like this emotional energy. And I think as a young man, I was intimidated by that. That was pretty scary. Now I'm old and I don't care and whatever, but but there is just this incredible, it's just vibrant there. And so for me, it's so fun to come in. And my goal, and I will say this specifically because I feel like psychology for a long time has really focused, I think, on the negative aspect of human characteristics, right? I mean, we've written 5 books about it, right? The Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, right? That's been our focus. And to identify, when we're depressed, how deep we can be depressed, anxious, suicidal, traumatized, all the different disorders that we can have. But over the past little while, I feel like psychology has made a really positive shift, which of course is the shift towards positive psychology, right? Where we're not just attempting to relieve suffering, we're not just attempting to diagnose conditions, but what we're really doing is we're trying to decipher really the psychology of joy and happiness. So it's less about our risk factors as a whole and more about us discovering what the protective factors, the things that can protect our children from suicide, the things that can protect our children from mental illness and some of those issues. And that's really what positive psychology is about, is us creating the type of individual and personal and societal and network kind of systems that increase our joy, that increase our engagement, increase our participation, increase our relationships, which of course is the most important factor for long-term happiness ever, is like our positive relationships. And so that's what we do at School Pulse. Our goal is really to promote student success. Like, we are on the other side of the spectrum. And I think part of that is because we realize that schools are really not meant to be mental health hospitals, right? That's not really their role. And so even though we deal with that, right, we are intervening, we are looking to prevent that. But overall, specifically at School Pulse, right, we want to make sure that our focus is on that growth mindset psychology, on positive psychology. And the reason why we lean on those, theoretically speaking, right, is because the evidence is just so unbelievably rock solid that when kids are optimistic, when they're positive, when they have a growth mindset about them, like, their emotional endurance just is better. The way that they perform is better. They're more creative. They retain information better. And the reality is, right, we've now realized that really it's success revolves around happiness, right? And not the other way around, which is really what we thought before. So it's really fun.
That's like a mind-blowing nugget, right? You said something earlier about mastery being a renewable source of happiness. And now that happiness drives success, not success drives happiness. Like, those little nuggets are things that take some people so long to realize. And if we pass that key of information on in real life experiences, the sky's the limit, right?
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. And I know that this question is coming, right, Lorraine, which is, as I look back again, right, towards my teen years a little bit, but I don't know exactly how much of that I would have internalized, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like the old adage, right? Like, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear, right? And so much of what comes to us, our mind and our heart kind of has to be at that place. In fact, I kind of always jokingly say, this world needs a humility movement, right? The idea of, can we just be contrite? Can our hearts be soft so that we can listen instead of having so much resistance, right? And when our hearts are soft, then of course we're teachable, right? Like, we're open. And when we're not, right, when we're resistant, then information kind of comes and boom, it just kind of bounces off and goes everywhere, which is why, specifically, like, my approach within School Pulse, and I'll share, I mean, your parents and whoever else is listening, you can have access to all of our awesome videos, all of our incredible resources, and you don't have to fill out any information or commit to it. It's just like a link. Go look at them, go utilize them. But what you'll find in those videos, I hope, is just a really gentle but very hyper voice that's just encouraging you to take good. Like, there's no pressure, there's no guilt or shame involved with it, but just, can I give you some tools that will make your life happier? And I think you'll enjoy them. I think your listeners will enjoy, and I hope that that's something that they can utilize with their own teen, their own children, whether it's because they want them to be a little bit more successful at school, or because they're missing class, or because summer's starting and they want some tips on how to have a really great summer or great school year. Like, we've literally been listening for teens, millions and millions of chats by now. And they've just asked us these questions. And so all of our videos have been developed as responses to those questions. And it's awesome. So I think you'll enjoy it, Lorraine. I hope your listeners will give it a listen, because like I said, it's just for them. It's for their teens. I specifically write the content to be delivered directly to a teenager, but I mean, any adult listening will get pretty hyped.
Yeah,
They'll get
and
excited.
I agree. The things that we create for teenagers is often things that like we also could use, you know? Oh, yeah. I find that very, very often to be true. So tell me, you were going to give us access to the videos. Is the app still something that is available? And do schools get that? How does that work?
It's really simple, and it's actually not an app. And I think you guys can see this little QR code that's right next to me. So this is actually something we place. So each individual school, of course, has their own specific QR code because we want to interact with students from that school. And then if there's ever relevant, data specifically, we want to inform the school. Like, in a sense, what we're trying to provide schools, right, is a pulse of their student body, like what's happening at my school, right? But this little QR code, your listeners are welcome to scan that, and it'll literally just open up their text and they'll just send that message, and that's it. And you've literally just entered kind of our demo. And we text our students twice a week, every Tuesday and every Friday. Every Tuesday, we deliver our student success activities, our videos. And then on Friday, we deliver other content that's inspiring and some of our little questionnaires. And so you're welcome to opt in. They're welcome to opt in. There's no cost to them. And this is just our demo, of course, to the school. Like, if you can imagine, Lorraine, that there are students who have opted into our service, less than 3% of them ever opt out. They open 98% of everything we send them. And there are kids that have been accessing our incredible content for 2, 3, 4 years. Like, it's amazing.
Yeah.
And they're just positive messages, that we're utilizing these genius little devices, right?
Right.
To do that. And we realize, right, there is a significant amount of data now, right, that connects cell phones to some struggles that teens are having. I am optimistic that they've got to figure it out. Like, we've kind of put it in their hands and we got to own that. And I think that they're going to find a way to deal with that so that it doesn't become a source of negativity for them. I think right now it is. I think the research is pretty good. I'm sure you've probably read The Anxious Generation. Yeah. There's a quote in there that I remember really well, specifically about teens and their phones. And it's specifically that teens are forever elsewhere when they're on their phone. They're just not there, right? Because the phones, all credit to phones, they are incredibly engaging to our senses. And I sometimes joke and I say, man, it's hard enough to live with one brain, but two brains? Oh my gosh. And that's what phones literally are. They are two brains that we're walking around with that are nudging us constantly. And so, but I am absolutely confident, that they will find a way to manage those phones. I have some great videos for parents about phones, about phone safety, about how to manage their phone with their kids. But like I said, directed at teens, that's a really popular one that we have a lot of parents look at. Is, in fact, the question that was asked by students was, is my phone a friend or a frenemy? What a great question. We made a video for it. So anyways, I'll share all those with you and you can enjoy.
Yeah. And I have been in this space enough working with teens to recognize that they are literally the first responder to a kid in crisis, right? So I'm going to literally go to my friend first. And I think you have just usurped that need, right, by providing this first response as proactive, positive optimism, right? So I may not need now to go to that teen, my friend, because I've already built my foundation. And so often when I'm working with teens, the adults in the life are like, I don't want to expose my child to knowing how to respond when somebody, and I often feel like, well, then we're missing out on this safety net. And I think there's so much value in having this proactive approach. I wrote it down when you said that principal said, I just don't have any tools in my tool bag. Yeah. And now we do. And more are being created. But I think what a fascinating opportunity to explore just focusing in on optimism as a preventative and proactive measure to, as you know, and my listeners know, the teenage years are, and you said they're lonely to begin with, but then you add this phone that gives you that false sense of connectedness that only accelerates and perpetuates that feeling of loneliness.
Yeah, I'll be honest, there's a part of me that feels not only to belabor on this one, but like there's a part of me that feels a little hopeless about it, meaning we've kind of introduced this and now we almost can't unintroduce it, right? Like you almost can't take it away. And I just think about, I mean, some of the car trips with my kids. I think about the time when we're sitting in the living room watching a movie and the movie is playing and my kids are on their phone. Like it's become so difficult for them to enjoy just one thing, right? And of course, that's been one of the critiques or some of the damage that these phones can do, right? Is this attention fragmentation, right? We can't stay in one because when we're here, we're getting, nudged here. So there is a part of me that is sad. I am optimistic, but there's a part of me that realizes that, man, we've introduced something in a way to our adolescents and it's creating some disadvantages that I believe they'll figure it out, but it's creating some disadvantages right now. It's creating some tough times for them. So,
well,
yeah.
I have two questions. One is the typical, like, give Iuri, who is currently a teenager, give him some advice, and then share how people can stay connected with you and find you and get more information from you.
So this is the therapy part. The moment you told me that you were going to ask that question, my mind absolutely chased that. Here's the first thing that I would say. And I'll start with kind of like my divorce story a little bit, meaning when my parents divorced when I was a young boy. And I did stay with my mom and really kind of lost touch with my dad for a long time. My dad passed away about 6 or 7 years ago. And he was still living in Portugal at that time. My brother lives in Portugal. He was still living in Portugal. And my brother reached out to me and said, hey, Iuri, I think Dad's going to die like soon. I think you need to come. If you want to say goodbye to him, you need to come. And my wonderful wife, once again, I think who sees so much more than I do, said, hey, we absolutely need to go. Like, you don't want to pass this up, Iuri. Like, don't do it. And once again, I don't feel like I was looking at my past and holding all of this bitterness and all of this resentment towards my dad. It really wasn't there. My unhealthy strategy was really more avoidance. Like I just avoid, ignore, and go about my life. But as I went to visit with my dad, and my wife and I went together and we stayed with him for a few days, or we stayed somewhere else, but we visited with my dad for a few days. And he was quite ill by then. He had Parkinson's and was not doing well. And some days was coherent, some days was not coherent. But I had some really interesting emotions that came up to the table at that time. Probably the very first one was anger. I was upset. I was actually upset at my parents. I was upset at my mom. I was upset at my dad. In my mind, I was thinking like, man, you're divorced for this. This is it. And then I was upset with myself. And then I was sad. Yeah. And I remember like the very last day when I was with my dad, and he was almost non-responsive. And I remember hugging him and saying goodbye. Not that I knew that he was going to die that day. He did die that night. But here I was, like, asking for his forgiveness. It's so interesting, like, how I went from I was angry to begging for his forgiveness at the time. I think he was coherent enough to just whisper that it was okay, which was really cool. And so I think the first thing that I would say to my teenage self, Lorraine, is be more forgiving. Like, be more forgiving. I would say that. Don't just avoid or ignore, but be forgiving and stay connected and engaged. And the other thing that I would say to my teenage self, especially to that boy who post-divorce moved a couple of times, moved to different high schools, and then moved countries, right, and came to the U.S. and lived here, is to be less afraid. Go with confidence, take positive steps, and just trust the process. I actually kind of did that. I just tried to take positive steps, and I will actually say that was absolutely life-saving for me. I just kind of kept moving forward. I was fortunate enough to have lovely people around me. And so I would say that. I would say be more forgiving. Go into the world with confidence. Like, just stop letting fear drive your life. You cannot do that. And then I would definitely say invest in the relationships around you, like starting with your mom, your dad, your siblings, your friends. Just invest there forever. Like, never stop. Never stop. That's what I would say.
That's some powerful advice.
Yeah, thank you, Lorraine. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So look at me. You've made me tender. This is good. It's good.
I love it. I love it.
I need to be tender.
Very vulnerable of you. Appreciate it.
It's good. You bet. If you want to talk to me personally, I mean, you can email me and I'll leave that. I'm just at Iuri@schoolpulse.org. And the way you spell my name is Iuri. It's kind of strange. And of course, if you want to go and see what School Pulse is, you can go to schoolpulse.org and you can find out about us. I will also send some links to you, Lorraine. We've created the most comprehensive mental health resource for teens in the world. Like, we offer that. We launch it in every single school and district we go to. We have total and free access to that. And of course, our videos that we share throughout the country with our teens. We would be honored if you feel like they're helpful to share them with your teens, whether they're dealing with a breakup or they want to stop overthinking, or they're burned out of school and they want to finish their year strong, or they want to know how to make a friend, or like, we've created videos for all of that. And I promise they are not cringy. They are fun. They are packed with goodness, and they're not long. They're short because we're dealing with teens. So it's got to be like,
Definitely the key.
we got to deliver impact quick. So that's how you can find out a little bit more about us. And I mean, you're welcome to check out my books as well. I can send you a link to that too. But yeah, it's just been a pleasure to be here with you, Lauren.
Yeah. Thank you so much. This was wonderful. Are you ready to help the young people in your life unlock their inner strength and step confidently into leadership? The new workbook from Peers Not Fears, Your Voice Matters, Uncovering Your Unique Leadership. It's designed to help teens see the leader in themselves, step by step. It's not just a workbook. It's the first step towards a ripple effect that could change lives. Let's turn today's teens into tomorrow's titans. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Leaders of Today, Teens to Titans. If you found this episode helpful, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with other parents who might benefit from this conversation. Together, we can support our teens in building healthy, positive relationships and become leaders of tomorrow. Until next time, I'm Lorraine Connell, and this is Leaders of Today, Teens to Titans.